you got a pretty interesting profile because I think you started with a corporate job. You have a background in pharmacy. And now you're training celebrities in the South. So how did that happen? Like, how did you get into fitness?
So what is not so strange is the fact that fitness has been a part of my life from my childhood.
Yeah.
Started with my dad being a big inspiration.
Okay.
I woke up every day when I was a child, seeing that man, pacing up and down the house, just jogging, doing his freehand exercises. Then he'll
Okay.
hit the weights.
Is your dad still pretty fit? Like he's a
Yeah,
very fit
he's
guy?
75.
And he's pretty fit.
Yeah, he's
Oh.
still like, he loves swimming, going for swims in the sea.
Awesome.
He learned swimming in the Ganges. So he grew up right next to
So
the
he
Ganges.
doesn't smoke, no other bad habits.
He used to, like, he used to smoke a lot till his 50s and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to understand that, see, their generation, smoking was considered cool, drinking.
It still is in us.
Yeah, but
In my age
not
group,
so
at least.
much. I mean, at least I don't know. I mean, at least amongst my friends, we have one set of people, who, of course, smoke. But then back then, smoking was, I mean, there was a lot of confusion also.
Yeah,
In
it
fact, there was a
wasn't
lot of
supposed
lack
to
of
be.
education.
Yeah, it wasn't that it was supposed to be bad for you.
Yeah,
There
it's
was
only
no.
now that you have very graphic images
Yeah.
on the covers.
Yeah.
But anyway, that is, maybe you can do a podcast with him to understand his perceptions
Yeah.
on smoking. But of course, as time went, he realized that it's not doing any good for him. When work stress was high, it may helped, but then eventually he gave up. But yeah, he was somebody who would drink. He's a Scotch guy, so
Right.
2-3 times a week he would drink, which he still does. The only health issue that he sort of carried, which he blames his genetics, but is a slightly elevated blood pressure, which is funny because I have low blood pressure according to the doctors.
Okay.
My blood pressure is like 99/46. But then, of course, the doctors tell me that because I train hard and stuff like
So
that.
does he ask you for advice? I've found that
Uh,
fathers are not very good at taking advice from
he
their
takes advice from my brother, who
Okay.
was my immediate influence when I first started training. So my brother and I have a gap of 11 years.
Okay.
So dad is, where I draw inspiration from dad is, for me, he's a symbol of consistency. Whenever people ask me that, how long have you been at it? I feel like, wow, I've been doing this for 20 years. But I think about him. I'm going to turn like 36, right?
Yeah.
And my dad is 75. So he's been, like, he was into gymnastics when he was a child. Then he did bodybuilding when he was in
Yeah.
college. He was always physically very active. He, like, if he got a chance to, walk somewhere to buy something, he would do that over driving or even cycling there.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of person that he is. And he still carries those values. And it's not that he finds pride in those values. And like
Yeah.
in fact, the way they look at it is, if you can walk somewhere, then walk there.
Yeah.
At least use your body for something. So I think that's a good thing that, he sort of put in my head and my brother's head, that, use your body, because that's the only way your body will continue to look after itself. If you just let it sit there all day,
Yeah.
like these days you have a new terminology even for people who exercise. They're called active couch potatoes. So they are people who sit all day,
Yeah.
maybe working or whatever, but they just make that 1 hour time to either go for a walk, swim, or train. But the rest of the day, they don't really do anything.
Yeah.
So
I was talking to my friend the other day because he's really lazy. And we used to be roommates when we were in college.
right.
And he refused. So we were living in we had 2 floors, and he refused to take the stairs up
Right.
to use the washroom. He didn't even want to do that. And he spent, I think, 20 grand or 40 grand a year on a gym membership, which he never went to. But he would go there to walk on a stationary treadmill for 30 minutes a day instead of not, even taking the effort to walk to college
G.
or not even walking on the stairs. And I told him, what are you, what's wrong with you? But there's a 24 hours in a day. If you really want to make the time out, you can get a lot done.
See, there's a lot more to it. I mean, I've got tremendous empathy for people, because, I have clients from all walks of life, and it doesn't help to judge people.
Yeah, it
I
definitely
mean,
does.
of course, as a coach.
Also, people don't like being criticized. You're just
No,
making
forget
enemy.
that. But
Yeah.
even if I look at it in a very pragmatic sense, it doesn't help when somebody's being judged, because my thing is that nobody's lazy intentionally. it's the circumstance of what people are doing with their day-to-day life. Now, back in the day when there was no Swiggy, Zomato, there were no mobile phones also, right? I remember if we had to buy something, we had to plan it for an entire week ahead, or
Yeah.
sometimes even a month ahead. So there would be these smaller grocery stores you would go to, like local kirana shop, what they call, where you would go and just buy maybe eggs and milk and stuff.
Yeah.
And then you would go to the main grocery stores during the, like, these would be these government building stores where under the roof you have somebody selling sabzi, there's the butcher shop. It's
Hmm.
not under the same, like today you have a Ratnadeep or whatever, but we
Yeah.
didn't have all that then.
Yeah.
And we would go buy groceries for the entire week.
Hmm.
So today, you sit at home, you go on Instamart or whatever, you just, okay, अच्छा दूध खत्म हो गया, मंगवा लो, अच्छा उसके साथ दो चीज़ और मंगवा लो, चॉकलेट भी मंगवा लो, ये भी मंगवा
Hmm.
लो. So I mean, when people have options, you cannot say that they will not exercise it. um, so I always go back to this video I had watched many years ago. It's called The Paradox of Choice. It's a very nice.
By Schwartz,
Yeah,
who's a
yes,
psychologist. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So back in 2007, a friend of mine, his name is Maulik Panchal. We were in same course together, pharmacy. So Maulik was somebody very wise amongst us. So Maulik had shown me this video. Um,
For
so
those that don't know, what is the paradox of choice?
so essentially, I mean, the brief of paradox of choice is that you have to draw your own boundaries.
Yeah.
Like today, as a customer, as a consumer, we have so many options that our satisfaction of purchasing something or experiencing something is not as good as it would be back in the day.
It also impacts career decisions a lot nowadays.
No, in anything.
Yeah.
You marry a woman that you really like. Next thing you know, you've got 5 other women hitting on you, and because of social media, because of maybe you're still on a dating app. Doesn't you don't know, right? I mean, you go meet people, you network. Today, I think about the people, the friends of mine who really matter to me. Lately, I've been doing an exercise where I've been trying to make like an extra effort to meet them. Usually, if I visited their
Your
city,
close friends or just new people?
friends who matter to me, like friends who I consider close. Like a friend of mine called Malhar, with whom I studied in school. So I was in Bombay last year
Mm-hmm.
for a fitness expo, but he was busy. He couldn't
Yeah.
meet me. This time I was like, "अरे यार मिलना ही है, कितने साल हो गए."
Hmm.
Then about a few weeks before that, I met another friend of mine where I was in Bangalore for exactly 2 hours.
Okay.
But for me, it was important because I was meeting him after 2009.
Right.
And even on that day morning he was messaging. Usually weekdays I wouldn't go anywhere, but that day morning I got up, I just trained my clients, then I caught a 12 o'clock flight. I landed Bangalore at 1. Took me 2 hours to reach UB City.
Mhm.
And it was raining, but then I was with him till about 4:30.
Right.
He came only, I think, at around 3:40 or something, because even they were stuck. We spent about an hour, we caught up, and then he was just telling me when I was leaving that I'm so glad you made the trip. So for me, those people who are very important for me, who I consider are important
Yeah.
for me, I try to prioritize and make time for them,
Yeah.
because I've realized that in every walk of life now, people have so much network. I mean, if I have 3 different brands of motorcycles, then that means I'm part of 3 different groups now.
Mhm.
3 group के अलग अलग rides होते हैं हर Sunday
Yeah.
को, and now it's like, who do you go with? So I'm
Yeah.
open to the idea of socializing. My work itself involves a lot of socializing, meeting
Yeah.
people and stuff like
And
that.
most opportunities come through people. So
Exactly.
yeah.
But more than opportunities, for me, it's about there are very few people with whom you can completely be yourself.
Only your family and a few people are going to really want what's
Not
best
even
for you.
family. In my case, at least, family, it's mostly just my brother,
Okay.
my wife. My dad and I, as much as I admire him, we don't get along very well. So
That's fine. Happens with a lot of people.
Huh,
There's nothing wrong with
that's
that.
absolutely
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
It's something even I'm very open about.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's no animosity per se. We just don't get
Yeah.
along. But as such, what I feel is there are certain people now, if I look back at 35, 36 years of my life, there are people that I, remember from different instances who matter to me.
Okay.
And lately, I've made it a point that I need to go just meet them at least maybe once a year, catch up with them, see how they are. Like I saw my friend Malar now, he's changed so much. Like he looks a lot like his dad.
Okay.
He still has the same dressing sense, but which is very boring. But
Yeah.
he's still, he's still he now starts to look more like his dad. He's put on a lot of weight, of course,
Yeah.
but he still talks the same way. And he used to be someone who was perpetually bored.
Okay.
And now that he's married, it's so interesting for me. It was very nice for me to hear the other day
Have
all
you
the
ever gone bored?
go to board of what.
No, just general, because I've heard of people, especially my grandfather recently, he was telling me how once he retired,
Hmm.
he didn't know what to do with himself. He actually didn't
Hmm.
know. And he's really fit as well, just like
Hmm.
your dad is.
Hmm.
And obviously if you've got the energy, you need to keep yourself active and, consumed in something productive.
G.
And so he's been taking piano lessons recently. And I just find that it's people that get bored are people that just don't have enough hobbies or interests. Like for me, I never get bored.
Hmm.
Like I've never had that issue. In fact, I've had to
Yeah,
cut
but how
down
old are
on.
you?
Sorry.
How old are you?
Yeah, but then I also have a lot of interests.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah, but for the viewers also, how old are you?
I'm turning 26 now.
Huh.
So
So
yeah.
you're still very, very young.
Yeah.
So at my age also, I mean, from what I understand from my peers, from my friends, again, depending on how busy you want to be, or how, I mean, it doesn't matter how big your ambitions are or whatever it is. Till the time you're working, I mean, there is really no scope for being bored.
Yeah, because I'm always busy.
Yeah.
You're always
Like,
busy.
I wish, for me now, priorities are like, getting good sleep,
Okay.
making sure my diet's on point, whatever basic diet I follow, making
What kind
sure
of diet do you follow?
it's quite balanced. I get in about close to 2000 calories a day.
That's it?
Yeah, that's it. I don't eat
Okay.
a lot. People might look at me and think I eat a lot.
Were you like on the heavier side when you were younger? And did you get bullied, by the
I
way?
was lean. I was lean. Then I became fat for some time when I was in like my early teens. Then I again became lean. Then again in college, I put on weight.
Yeah.
So I'm not like of any particular body type.
Yeah.
It's for me, it's like I think if I just let it be, I would look like any normal Bengali kid, like
Uh-huh.
very like soft, goal like that,
Uh-huh.
but not chubby per se.
Right, right.
What Bengalis considered healthy, as they would describe it. But obviously because I eat a certain way, train a certain way, so obviously that has changed. If I obviously stop training, then that
Yeah.
everything will revert back to what it was. But yeah, I don't eat more than like 2000 calories. I get about maybe 180 grams of protein in a day,
Okay, that's not
close.
much.
Yeah, about 200 220 grams of carbs. The rest come from fats.
Pretty balanced.
Yeah, pretty balanced. I mean, on paper it might sound a lot, like
Yeah.
I wake up, I have like a couple of scoops of whey,
Yeah.
then a few hours later it's about
What's
9
your
egg
opinion
whites.
on people that go on these fat diets? Because I know a lot of people that struggle with fitness.
Hmm.
And I know people, you talked about how you were thin and then you got fat and you got
Hmm.
thin. And I was reading a stat actually. This is an
Hmm.
actual stat. So let's say you go on a diet.
Hmm.
I come to you or Arun or a different
Hmm.
trainer, and 75% of the people that lose weight,
Hmm.
lose fat, and get in shape,
Hmm.
75% of them regain it within 1 year,
Hmm.
85% within 2 years,
Hmm.
and 95% within 3 years.
Hmm.
So the people that are actually able to stay fit are 5%, maintain a good healthy weight.
Right.
So what's your opinion on people that go on these fat diets? And generally, let's say I come to you
Hmm.
and I've always struggled with my fitness. Well,
Hmm.
how do you help me establish the right behaviors?
Okay, so first of all,
And why do I bother training at all? Like, I mean, in general, because
okay, I mean, that is a very personal thing. I mean, it's up to you. I
yeah,
mean, there is enough evidence to show that having some level of physical activity helps.
yeah.
Now, to what extent you wish to do it, like I tell people, like play a sport. That's the easiest
But
way
let's
to.
say I'm an accountant. You were
Hmm.
talking about active
Then
couch
go for a
potato.
walk. Go for a walk,
Yeah,
swim, do chores around the house. I mean, at least do something with your body. End of the day, that's what it essentially comes down to.
right.
But that's what I was trying to say, that my journey of being thin, going fat, it was never that I followed a diet per se. When I went through phases when I was physically active, I was lean,
Yeah,
and it's not that I was calorie counting or anything of that sort. So my journey was very different. It was more like circumstances, like board exams आ गए तो ठीक है मैं घर पे बैठा हूँ खाना खा रहा हूँ मोटा हो
yeah.
गया फिर मैं बोर्ड एग्जाम्स खत्म हो गए मैं फिर से जिम गया मैं फिर से पतला हो गया
Hmm.
but it was never that I wanted to look a certain way. It's definitely not to the level of consciousness that people have now.
Hmm.
For me it was just ठीक है हाँ मतलब हुआ नहीं हुआ नहीं. I was anyway always physically very active.
Yeah,
It's just that as I have been part of this industry now, of course, for myself, I need to look a certain way. I have two big
yeah.
sponsors. I represent multiple people. I train some pretty big guys. So it's important for me to at least stay in shape. I'm not saying like stay
Is
ripped.
are steroids prevalent
They're
in
very
the south?
rampant.
Yeah,
I mean,
especially if you're an actor
and
or
it's
something.
wrong to use the word steroids because steroids themselves are a broad class of drugs. The right terminology is what we call PEDs, performance
Performance
enhancing
enhancing
drugs.
drugs.
Among them, you have something called AAS, androgenic anabolic steroids. So that is a very specific class of steroids that are nothing but analogs, chemical analogs of testosterone that are used by people for enhancement.
Yeah.
But steroids by themselves are a very broad class of drugs. So I mean, that's what people generally like to say
Are a
steroid.
lot of these athletes,
Hmm.
famous athletes on steroids, according to you?
Probably.
I like to believe they're not.
No,
But
it would
I'm
be
guessing a
naive
lot
on
of
your
them
part
are.
to think that they are not.
I like to believe so, but
You
I
should
know
watch
they're
this
probably not.
documentary called Icarus,
Icarus, I watched it.
and
Yeah,
also the much earlier before that there was another documentary called Bigger, Stronger, Faster.
I've seen that one as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you watch them and if you generally just read up on sports, I mean, look at that pattern. Like if you just go on Wikipedia and search a list of people who have been caught with banned substances over the last 30 or 40 years, you'll be shocked to see that almost in every major sport people dope.
Yeah.
So I mean, look, we do all kinds of recreational basis also. We are all using some sort of a performance enhancer on a day-to-day basis.
Even caffeine is a drug. I mean, it's a legal drug. Alcohol is one as well, actually.
Caffeine is not even a legal or illegal. Caffeine is such a very generic substance. But the
Yeah.
thing is that for me, where the distinction lies, because I've had the fortune of studying the subject, personally for me, the decision comes not from what is legal or illegal. For me, the decision comes from what is healthy and unhealthy. So there is always use and abuse.
Right.
So even caffeine can hurt you if you abuse it. Doesn't
Of
matter if
course.
it's legal. Alcohol can hurt you as well if you abuse it.
Yeah, you
So
can
what if it's legal?
actually. Yeah, I can actually drink enough
Yeah, but
alcohol
then there are
and kill myself.
people, then there are, I know there are people with HIV who are living great quality lives because they are taking testosterone or they're taking
Okay.
growth hormone. Now, I don't care what the governments or so called medical professionals, for me, it doesn't really matter what the medical professionals might say, what the government might come and say, what the doctors might come and say. Especially in a country like India, people, most pharmacies don't even ask you for a prescription.
Yeah, they don't.
You walk in, you tell them
I've been
मेरे को XY,
offered. I've
आप
been
XYZ
offered.
बोलो,
Yeah.
आपको कोई भी कुछ भी दवाई दे देगा.
Yeah.
So I mean, laws are one thing. Does the government really care for the people? The answer is yes or no. But the thing is, see, those become a very political discussion, and they go into more generic sense, and then it becomes such a big topic that you're not going to really get a yes or no from everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So what it comes down to is, does it matter to you?
Okay, so
You know.
tell me this.
Hmm.
In general, of course, I know steroids are prevalent
Hmm.
in cinema, and you have to look a certain way for camera.
Hmm.
But I also know that. Have you read this book by this French doctor? It's called The Ageless Man. By any
Hmm.
chance? No. Okay.
No.
He was working with a bunch of hormones and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And obviously after 40, it's difficult, your hormone levels start to drip. And I can try keeping fit, but it
Hmm.
does get difficult.
Yeah.
And I know there are several advantages to TRT.
Hmm.
I think that is legal, right? You can go to a clinic now in India. There are TRT clinics now.
See, I mean, if a doctor, forget TRT, if today, let's say, you go to the doctor and you say that, I don't get sexually aroused,
Yeah.
I have erectile dysfunction or anything of that sort, whether it's a sexologist, whether it's an endocrinologist, they will immediately prescribe some form of testosterone to you. So now that is just to balance out whatever levels are going wrong for you, basis your blood work that the doctor will decide. The funny thing is that every doctor has their own approach of interpreting the diagnostic data and also interpreting how they want to go about your prognosis. I've spoken to doctors who tell people that if you feel fine, don't take anything.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what your blood work says. If your lipid profiles are high, there's that koi baat nahi, aap theek hi ho, ab jao. No need to take any kind of medication to unnecessarily normalize your lipid profile or normalize your blood pressure or anything. And there are doctors who sit and fine tune every single thing, everything from your thyroid to your testosterone to your growth hormone. So question is, and this is the big question, and this is what I try to tell my clients when there is so much noise in their mind, how important is it, right? How important is it for you to evaluate your quality of life? Like, do you really sit and assess small things? Like, for example, there are so many people I know who completely accept that I sleep 4 hours a day.
Yeah,
मेरे को उसके ऊपर नींद नहीं आती है. Now, I know that in the long term, these people will pay a price,
of course they
right?
will. Yeah,
But to them, it's completely normal that I go to sleep and मुझे 4 घंटे से ज़्यादा नींद नहीं आती है और फिर मैं उठ जाता हूँ. तो उसमें क्या गलत है, right? So from a generic standpoint, from an Aam Aadmi standpoint, that makes perfect sense. I get 4 hours of sleep, I'm fine. My mother-in-law is one such person.
yeah,
She's somebody, who generally doesn't sleep for more than 3 to 4 hours in a night. So she gets up and starts doing things. And she's mentally very driven. Like, when she's focused on some job, being a housewife, she's always had to take care of 2 kids. There's that and
yeah.
all. My father-in-law is an ex-army person. So she's, always been busy doing things. Today, there are multiple health issues now she's developed, which are most likely all because of poor sleep, poor
Right.
lifestyle, and just stress in general.
It all adds up.
So, what people don't understand is that the body is also a machine. Now, despite what you may think that you are capable or not capable of, there are some general, bylaws that we have. Like, for example, if somebody says, मैं पानी नहीं पीता हूँ, मत पियो. तुमको प्यास लगती है, तुमने उसको एक मेंटली ब्लॉक कर दिया है, तो तुम दिन का 1 लीटर पानी पी के भी मैनेज कर लेते हो, कोई बात नहीं है. Do we recommend that people drink more water? I'm not saying gulp it down,
Yeah,
but generally there is enough data to show that people require a certain minimum amount of
yeah,
water in order to maintain blood viscosity,
yeah.
tonicity, in order to reduce the load on your kidneys, all of those aspects. So when you buy a car also, right, when you buy a car or a motorcycle or any machine for that matter, you're told that you need to use XYZ engine oil only, you need to fill only a certain grade of petrol. You're not going to put kerosene. Rather, in fact, it's funny that people look after their machines with so much care and love.
But they don't look at
They
their
read the
body.
manual, they go online, ki kaise karna hai, kya karna hai. We buy a phone, then we buy a phone case, then we put a phone a screen guard. It all has to be of a certain this thing. But when it comes to the body, chalta hai. Everything is chalta hai. And what I find funny is that, I mean, of course, I'm not somebody who goes tell people what they should do, what they should not do. But I have now been around long enough to see people who are very arrogant that the way they are living their life is completely fine. And, suddenly one day something happens and then they call me up and said, well, shit hit the fan, now
But
kya?
that's the thing, right? People don't like unsolicited advice.
No, and
If you,
nobody's
even if
giving you unsolicited advice. But the
yeah,
thing is that my chemistry teacher used to say this almost every day in our school lecture, that common sense is not so common. And I
yeah,
heard,
that's very
yeah,
true.
and I would hear that every time from her. And these are things that I have kept in my mind, which gives me tremendous empathy for people. And see, as a coach, I try to be solution oriented,
Of
right?
course.
Um, even my own wife, is very averse to my coaching inputs. So if I tell her something, it takes her a lot of time to grasp it, vis-a-vis some of my other clients who will make that change right then and there.
Yeah,
So that's okay. हम बोलते हैं घर की मुर्गी डाल बराबर. It's as simple as that.
right.
But the thing is that people unfortunately are going to learn the hard way. Like now,
Right.
see what's happening in Delhi.
Hmm.
The air quality is so bad
Yeah,
that they now have to shut schools and all. Imagine how badly it's going to hurt the economy.
yeah,
The all the companies that set up offices there, the productivity of the city is going to
right.
hit. It's going to be pretty bad. What were we waiting for? Didn't we know so far that the quality of air of Delhi was pretty bad? But what did the
Hmm.
government do?
Right.
Other than that odd and even scheme of the number plates, they didn't really do anything else. It's not that they said कि नहीं अब तो सिर्फ electric गाड़ियाँ चलेगी or anything of that sort.
Hmm.
So humanity in general are the sort of species that are going to always push their luck
Yeah,
for their convenience until they've realized that it's not the way it works.
yeah. You were talking about why bother training?
Hmm.
And we met in Hyderabad, obviously.
Right.
I didn't tell you the story actually. You just said that common sense is very uncommon,
Hmm.
and I smoked my first cigarette when I was pretty young, but I
Hmm.
smoked one cigarette and never smoked it after that
Acha.
because I grew up with a lot of people that were from well-off families,
Hmm.
and their schools, were sort of prevalent with a lot of this stuff,
Right.
and so they got into it pretty early. So
Hmm.
I was exposed to that. And so I started pretty early, but I've always been strong. I've never been addicted to anything, nothing, either alcohol,
If
whatever.
you enjoyed it, you did it. Otherwise, you didn't.
Not just enjoy it. I don't need it. I've never
Hmm.
been dependent on anything, even, and I don't like even if it's a person. I
Right.
don't like being dependent on a person either. If I am
Hmm.
getting too dependent on that person, I'm always thinking what's gonna happen when they're not there,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? So
Hmm.
it's not just a thing; it's also a person or whatever.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because I think independence is always important,
Right.
right? Um, and I was just thinking to myself, a lot of my guys, my like, I haven't done that much. It's not like I'm
Hmm.
famous actor or like a top politician or
Hmm.
anything like
Hmm.
that. But luckily, I'm not starving to that. Touch wood.
Hmm.
And so I've got enough money in the bank.
Hmm.
But being sick is expensive.
Hmm.
And the agency that I was working on, all of them were my age,
Hmm.
and all of them smoked about a packet a day.
Acha.
Literally a packet a day.
Hmm.
Literally everyone smoked.
Hmm.
I was the only one that didn't smoke.
Right.
And this happened even during my college days when I was studying in Pune.
G.
And I was just thinking to myself, uh, do they not think about it that they're gonna spend all their 20s
Hmm.
making money, saving that 20,000, 30,000 here and there,
Hmm.
and all of this is gonna add up, and it's
Hmm.
really gonna start showing its effect when it's 40.
Hmm.
And even to get an ACL today,
Hmm.
ACL, so it costs about 1.5 lakhs.
Hmm.
So being sick is expensive. And I was just wondering to myself, do they not think about this? Because eating
No,
crap,
they
no,
really don't. The
because
fact
I
is
think
that
I actually worry for myself. Because if I start doing that
no, that's
stuff,
good. I mean,
yeah,
the fact that you have enough self care and awareness that
yeah,
you think about that. You know, for example, I'll tell you, and this is where the extremes lie. Like one of my clients is a very big actor here. He's 61 years old, and when I first met him, I couldn't understand why he needed my services. So he just wanted me to do his nutrition bit, and until then, he had never worked with any nutritionist or anyone till date. So when I sat down with him, he was 61 then. So I asked him, I looked at him and I said that you look really fit. Yes, there is some deviation in some of your blood markers,
hmm,
but I don't really understand what exactly do you want from me, because it's not that anything major needs to be changed. It's not that you need to undergo a major transformation or anything. So he said that, look, my father lived till his 90s. He had cancer.
okay,
Um, and I'm sure by now, if people who are watching have figured out who I'm talking about. But he basically said that, my father was, till the last day, even with cancer, was very active and, working. And I'm just 61 now. So if you think about it from my perspective, I still have another 30 odd years. And I would like to work
yeah,
these 30 odd years. So keeping that in mind, it is important for me that I have more energy, more focus. So you are not here to do damage control. There's absolutely nothing wrong with me. I'm perfectly healthy. I'm perfectly fine. But you're actually here to optimize things better for me so that I have more energy, more
yeah,
focus. I'm doing these reality show where I'm standing for 16 hours a day
yeah,
shooting.
fantastic.
I've got a bunch of action movies coming up. So that's when I realized that there are a one set of people who abuse their bodies, and then there are one set of people who use their bodies, but they also are very conscious that they have to take care of them. So this whole distinction between what is that, then things are going to go out of whack tomorrow. And like you said, sickness is expensive.
Yeah, it's really expensive.
So one of my clients only very recently realized that it was a very minor procedure that he went to get done in a hospital, and that doctor completely messed it up.
Right.
And we were doing a very focused transformation there. He has been working with me for a year now,
Yeah.
and this was the first time where everything fell in place. His schedule, his diet, everything was bang on.
Yeah.
He was dropping fat beautifully. He was looking good. He was very active. And 4 weeks into that, he went and got this procedure done. The doctor was like, हाँ सुबह आ जाओ, दोपहर को चले जाओ, कोई हो जाएगा, 2 दिन बाद आप workout कर पाओगे. He didn't consult me also that I'm getting this done. He thought it was a little private, so he didn't want to talk about it. And then he was out of action for another month
Right.
because that doctor, the surgery went wrong. Then he had to go to another hospital where they had to do corrective surgery. It was a big mess.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, these kind of things happen. People are always taking knee-jerk reactions to small things. So I was telling him that that issue, whatever you went to fix, happened primarily because you were not sleeping enough,
Right.
and that's why it aggravated. If you had been sleeping, it was very manageable. So anyway, everybody has their own way of dealing with things. So
Right.
where I find solace for myself is, I'm not there to save the world,
Right.
because that's not the bandwidth that I have. But I'm more than happy to save someone who wishes to be saved.
Of
So if
course.
they come to me and say that, hey, I need help, and this is where I think I might be going wrong, can you guide me so that I can, I'm sure whatever best I can do.
Yeah.
But like recently, I started working with this family where their child is basically got autism. So the child is active.
Yeah.
She goes for a lot of therapy and stuff like that. But she needs to lose weight,
Yeah.
and they're making her do these swimming classes because she likes being in the water.
Yeah.
So then, of course, that same swimming coach happens to be one of my proteges. So he said that you should take Arun's guidance on the nutrition
Yeah.
part. So I met the neurologist who is looking after this child. I even spoke to the pediatrician who monitors everything. So they were like, yeah, diet wise, we tried this, we tried that. And this is where I get really surprised that sometimes doctors, are trying to guide patients with nutrition. So I told this, the
Should they
child,
not be? Doctors should be
they don't
guiding people.
study nutrition. They don't study nutrition in a generic
I mean, they
sense.
might be having some. Some chapters about
So
nutrition
that's
that
like
they.
saying that an electrical engineer knows how to fix your car. He
Okay.
studied engineering,
Yeah.
he knows how the bits are. But would you take it to a showroom, or would you ask your friend who's an electrical engineer to fix your
Yeah.
10, 15, 20 lakh rupees odd car?
Right.
It's as simple as that. So I'm not saying you come work with me, you know. I'm saying go to a clinical nutritionist. There are nutritionists, registered dietitians that are sitting in hospitals. जो पढ़ाई किया जिस सब्जेक्ट का उसके पास जाओ ना.
Have you worked with anyone? Because I know you train obviously a lot of high profile people that are looking good, look good on screen. You talked
Hmm,
about optimizing health for this one elder
hmm, hmm, hmm,
gentleman. But anyone who, in terms of the special population, you talked
hmm.
about this uh,
Yeah, I work with
person
a
that,
lot of people. I mean, I didn't for a long time,
yeah,
because it was ethically wrong. But turns out that these people weren't benefiting massively. So I've worked with about 20 cases till date where people have muscle dystrophy, which is a genetic issue
yeah,
where people lose muscle mass. And I have a tremendous success with these people just simply following basic resistance training and sports nutrition protocols. Nothing different. Worked with a bunch of people who've got cancer, lots of people who've got
have you
diabetes.
been able to get rid of cancer?
Of course not. That
Okay,
is not my prerogative, or that's not my area of expertise. But like I said, my approach is to help somebody with their quality of life. And where I tend to differ a little bit with these guys is I always keep the doctor involved. So I loop in things through the doctor that this is what I'm planning to do in terms of the nutrition, in terms of the physical activities that I'm suggesting, or even any of the
yeah,
supplements that I suggest. And in many cases, the doctors felt that they could reduce the dosages of the medications that they were giving to these patients simply because their bodies were responding because their nutrition, supplementation, their physical activity was helping them
yeah,
respond to the medication. End of the day, even for your body to respond to medication, it has to have some level of health, some recovery potential. And if you're not giving your body that, doesn't matter how much medication you're on.
a lot of people that do get cancer, they
Hmm.
often struggle with stuff like depression and stuff like that because the same drugs that are killing the cancer cells, they're also stopping stuff like neurogenesis. I know this one person actually.
Hmm.
Uh, Now she's actually doing pretty well for herself.
Hmm.
But she had cancer,
G.
and she used to be a corporate, and she was working long, stressful hours, not sleeping.
Hmm.
And now her whole career is based around just curing people of autoimmune conditions and
Hmm.
some people who get cancer.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I mean, it's awesome the power of nutrition. I mean, she did it all through nutrition,
And see,
and doctors had given up,
and
totally given up.
that's the sad part, right? I mean, for somebody like you who's 26 years old to say that, it's awesome how powerful nutrition is, but it wasn't so bad before for us. Even what are the way our ancestors raised us, what basic values that we had at even home. I mean, from a basic reference standpoint, think about how your health was when you were a child.
Yeah,
जब आपको घर पे खाना मिलता था. What would you get for breakfast, lunch? Was it a fat diet? Did your parents say, beta hum tumko keto pe dal rahe hain, ya ye kar rahe hain, ya wo kar rahe hain? You went to school, you studied all day, you played, came back. Imagine the energy levels that you
Yeah.
had. But imagine also remember the basic things that you did. Your parents made sure you slept at least 8 or 9 hours.
Yeah.
You always carried a water bottle. You always had your meal breaks, your breakfast, your lunch,
Have
your
you experimented with fasting at all?
my wife does intermittent fasting,
But do you
but
think there's any benefit to it?
it's very subjective. It's
In
very
terms of,
in terms of what is convenient for you.
so for
Scientifically speaking, there is no superior advantage that it gives you.
not even in aging, because I've been reading a lot of stuff about aging and fasting. Not in terms of building muscle,
Everything
but
is very anecdotal. Everything is very theoretical.
okay.
Like it's like the same thing where doctors will say, "Acha, ye karne se ye hota hai." So basically, they'll say that when you fast, there is autophagy, there is
Yeah.
renewed cells that you get. Your body has higher levels of growth hormone, but the long term effects are minuscule. They're negligible. You have to see, you have to have some critical thinking. You can't be like, oh wow, this looks amazing. Like I have an iPhone 13, and somebody said the iPhone 14's lens is this, that, and all. I looked at the pictures. I couldn't make out the difference. I can make out the difference between this phone and my previous iPhone, which was a 6S Plus. But between this phone and the 14, I couldn't make out the
But then
difference.
that's the question of, let's say, you talked about optimizing,
Hmm.
and some people are very interested in
But the
not everyone
question
is.
is that are you really optimizing? I mean,
Okay.
how is it that fasting is going to optimize things? There are more basic things that perhaps you are overlooking.
Yeah.
For example, 90% of the world is deficient in vitamin D. Why don't you go optimize that to start with?
Yeah.
You know, most people don't even
Do you
get.
supplement vitamin D every day?
Yes, for myself, for my clients,
How many I use?
depends. My clients could be anything between, they could be taking anything between 400 IU to 800 IU to
And
1000,
you don't
2000.
recommend they just go get more sunlight, or you recommend they get more?
Sunlight will not help.
Okay.
Sunlight will not help. Number one, because there is not enough of your body that's exposed to sunlight for the body to produce enough vitamin D. That's
Okay.
first thing. Just your hands and face cannot get enough sunlight to produce vitamin D. Secondly, even if you had to practically just expose yourself to sunlight, you will have to stand butt naked under the sun for 20 minutes to 40 minutes to get enough sunlight.
Mm-hmm.
If it's an overcast day, it could be as long as an hour.
Yeah.
Sunlight exposure has its benefits, but if you think that that's going to be enough for you to produce enough vitamin D, then you're wrong. And on top of that, with the increasing number of vegans and vegetarians, the natural levels of our cholesterol is a lot less,
Yeah.
which is the basic raw material in making vitamin D. So even if you got enough sunlight, you wouldn't be making enough vitamin D to begin with. So the practical thing to do is just supplement it, because
Yeah.
there is no other way to get it.
Right. Did you watch the movie Game Changers? Of course,
Of
because you brought up
I
vegans. So I, because I know a lot of people that are going vegan, thinking that that's what's best for them, but I tell them
It
no.
was a very well made documentary which was outright based on absolute lies.
Not
And
just lies, they just presented evidence that was. I mean, if I really
it
want
was
to prove
presented
something,
as evidence which is actually not evidence of anything.
yeah,
If you read into all the data that they have spoken of, and there are people on YouTube who have, like for example, there's one guy called Lane Norton.
yeah,
Lane Norton actually did a video where he took every single claim that the documentary made and showed that there was no evidence against it. In fact, there was a lot of counter evidence against
yeah,
those things. And it just essentially came down to the fact that this whole documentary was very conveniently aligned at the timeline where James Cameron and Arnold had come up with a vegan supplement brand.
right,
And yeah, so who's benefiting from it?
yeah,
Right. So it was a very well made documentary, but it was full of lies, full of falsified data. There's nothing to document it. Like there was one portion of it where they talk about where we get our aminos from nature. Like, if you where so if we are getting it from, let's say, chicken, where is the chicken getting it from? Or the chicken is getting it from the plants, or whatever hay or whatever it is that it is eating. So if you just eat the plants, that's good enough. Well, the chicken is doing the conversion of that into tissue, and then we are getting it there. I mean, you've just now completely, given me a different perception towards chemistry. Are you telling me that my body's ability to assimilate different
hmm,
amino acids from plant-based sources is going to be as good as that? No, there is very basic science to prove that humans require about 9 essential amino acids. We need to get them in certain quantities to build
hmm,
muscle and for many other activities for repair this thing. And if you're not getting it from the diet, then your body cannot synthesize them.
right,
There is no scientific debate against that.
mm-hmm,
So, and it is a known fact that vegans and vegetarians struggle to get, at least vegetarians can still get it if their diet has enough
yeah,
dairy,
yeah,
but vegans primarily struggle to get it.
okay,
So if you pick that one genetic, freak who's supposedly also a vegan and say, look at him, yeah, then try it.
Yeah.
Because guess what happened after the Game Changer documentary came out? A lot of people tried it, and a lot of people came back and said, nahi kaam kar raha hai. All of that is not practically manifesting on me. But did they talk about their failure on their social media as much as they raved about the Game Changer documentary? No, because nobody wants to project themselves negatively.
Yeah.
That I listened to every single bullshit data that the Game Changer documentary gave me, and I tried it, and guess what? It didn't work.
We also post about things that make us look good. Like, when you're posting on social media, you feel like, you're Batman or Spider-Man. But
No,
in
in
reality,
fact,
you're probably wearing your underwear and living in your mom's
no,
basement.
when
So
this documentary
it's
came out, I
pretty-
actually gave out an open challenge.
Yeah.
Because so many of my peers started talking very highly of the documentary. And I gave out an open challenge and I said, anybody who can design a nutrition plan, plant-based nutrition plan for me, which can help me get the same recovery potential that I have from my existing diet,
Yeah.
if you can manage to do that for me, I will go vegan. And only one guy called Pratik, who works with Fitter, came forward and he gave me a diet plan which had close to 700 grams of soy in it.
Okay.
And I said, dude, I'm not putting that much soy in my body.
Of course.
Rather, let me tell you, I could even look at hemp. So he was like, but आपको hemp कहाँ से मिलेगा? I was like, वो मैं ठीक है, but तू मुझे इतना क्यों soy दे रहा है?
Especially as a male.
I
Not.
mean, see, again, the phytogen thing is again the same. But the thing is, the soy, even as a protein itself, it's a very poor muscle builder.
Yeah, it's a class 2 protein, right?
Exactly. So you have to look at what we call the PDC AA scores, protein digestibility corrected amino acid score. So if you go by that, whey is at the top.
Yeah.
Whey or any
In terms of
dairy-based protein.
absorption, right? It absorbs.
So
the
like it
amount that
says,
you
it's
absorb.
protein digestibility corrected amino acid score. So basically the best score you can get is 1, and then anything below 1 is basically, so 1 is whey, casein. I think egg whites are like 0.98. Beef is I think 0.75, things like that. So I think pea protein has like 0.38,
Okay.
things like that. So but there are people I know who tell me that मैं वे प्रोटीन नहीं लेता हूँ, मैं पी प्रोटीन आइसोलेट लेता हूँ. मैंने कहा ठीक है, अगर आपको डाइजेशन इश्यूज हो रहा है, फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल पी प्रोटीन डजंट हैव इनफ एसेंशियल अमीनो एसिड्स टू हेल्प यू विद मसल रिकवरी. बट somebody said I can't have whey, but I can't have soy either, so I'll have pea. That's just somebody fulfilling a demand that exists. But are you taking the right product for your supposed post-workout nutrition or to fill your nutrition gap? No.
Probably not.
You would be better off, like if vegans are watching this, I would recommend them to try a hemp-based protein powder, because that is one of the best protein powders vegans can actually use.
Yeah.
And it's there by a bunch of Indian brands. In fact, a lot of Indian supplement brands are now planning to get hemp-based protein.
Yeah, I have a friend who's making hemp protein actually.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's the only
he's,
challenge with that is keeping the quantity of carbohydrates less, because in 100 grams, I believe at least close to 40 or 50 grams is just carbohydrates.
Right.
So if you can balance that with your diet, then that's absolutely fine. But again, people associate a protein powder having carbohydrates as being a bad thing.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people will be like, how much carbohydrate does the protein powder have? I'm like, dude, really? Like, you can just balance that like 2 grams or 4 grams of
Yeah.
that carbohydrate in the protein in your diet. You don't have to be so obsessed with kya hai. But I know people who will pay 2,000 rupees extra for a tub just because it has no carbs,
Yeah.
versus the same brands, slightly carb rich, protein, which has maybe 2 or 4 grams per scoop. नहीं मेरे को कार्ब्स नहीं चाहिए. मैंने कहा अभी तो जाके तू पेस्ट्री तोड़ने वाला है,
Yeah.
उससे ज़्यादा तेरे को कार्ब्स नहीं आने वाला है. So I mean, the more I dig into this, the more I can just strip people down to the fact that they are all hypocrites end of the day. And in very situation based scenarios, people talk like they really know something, and they do know, but everybody applies it very conveniently.
Right.
It's as simple as that.
Okay, so let's say I've taken a lot of inspiration from this podcast. And I'm gonna start working out. Right? What are the best exercises that you recommend? Let's say I'm gonna dedicate 40 minutes to my fitness and health. Right? I've only got 40 minutes because I'm a busy professional. From what I've heard from most fitness professionals, they're always recommending bench, squat, deadlift, especially those that are, trainers in the gym or whatever. That those are the 3 exercises that will always pay dividends. So let's say I'm mid 35, I'm 35-year-old, and I want to start working out? What should I just start with incorporating?
First of all, what is your goal? If your goal is just generally to be fit, then any form of physical activity will help. In fact, what I start most of my clients out with, which has been a learning for myself, is with a lot of mobility drills.
Okay.
So a lot of because people carry a lot of stiffness.
Yeah.
They sit all day, so their hips are stiff, their shoulder is stiff, the scapulary regions have a lot of tension. First thing I want them to do is be loose. So get all the joints moving smoothly. So in fact, some of my clients, they're so stiff that the first week or two, all that they're doing is mobility. And
Right.
you go talk to any good physiotherapist, they will put you through the same thing.
Right.
You go to them and say, I have XYZ issue. They'll first thing they'll say is stop training and just do mobility and corrective exercises for at least, a week or 2 weeks before your body opens up a little bit. Because if your mobility is not on point, then the training itself is not going to be as efficient. Your
Right.
range of motion is going to be restricted. Hence, you're not making the most out of the exercise.
I know a lot of people that have really banged up shoulders and
Anything you said,
just
bench,
'cause of,
squat, deadlift,
yeah.
right? So let's say every time you squat, you can't even go down to even parallel.
What's your opinion on the butt wink?
That's again very anatomical.
Yeah.
It's an anatomical this thing, but it's a simple fix. Elevate your heels.
But is that a problem? Because some people say that
No, it's not a
butt wink
problem.
is fine. Some people say butt
The
wink is a
major
terrible thing.
problem with the squat that I find with people is when there are muscle imbalances, they cannot even come down smoothly. Like there is constant hip shifting that's happening.
Yeah.
That hip shift is more scary for me than the depth. I don't mind if somebody has bad depth. I can fix bad depth very easily. You can go from barely squatting parallel to squatting ass to grass with me within a session.
Okay.
But if there is hip shift, then that's when there are muscle imbalances which are flaring up. So maybe your right glute is weak compared to the left glute. So the left glute is now trying to compensate for the work that the right glute is not able to do.
Yeah.
Maybe your hamstrings are tight. Maybe
Yeah.
your pelvic flexors are not strong. Maybe your calves are not strong. So that's why I'm saying if you do mobility for your shoulders, for your hips, for your, generally your ankles and stuff like that. Like I realized this that for the longest time, my squat depth was messed up because my right ankle mobility was poor.
Okay.
So I do a little mobilization of my right ankle before I squat, and boom, my squat depth immediately improved.
Right.
Otherwise, मैं सोच रहा था क्या मेरा glute weak है, ये है, वो है. Then somebody said, dude, your right ankle just needs to mobilize a little
Yeah,
bit. You'll
yeah,
be
yeah.
fine. I did the we basically do this test. I forgot the name, but we basically push our keep our toes about 4 inches away from the wall, and we just push our knees towards the wall.
Right.
If the heel doesn't elevate or lift, then that means you have good ankle mobility. If the heel is lifting, so that means you have poor ankle mobility, and you just need to mobilize it. So
Yeah.
that can be just done with a tension band or a Theragun or whatever, and just mobilize that area, just the front fascia of that area,
Yeah.
just mobilize it, and your ankles will open up and you can start
Pretty
doing
easy.
it. So essentially to answer your question, do a lot of mobility, start with body weight based exercises if you can.
Yeah.
So in fact, I wouldn't even say bench press, deadlift, squat. I would say do pull-ups, do push-ups, do free squats, do diamond push-ups,
Right.
do planks.
But the only thing you can't do with body weight is you can't train your lower back. That's the one thing I
Why
find.
can't you train your lower back? You
Well,
can do hyperextensions.
Yeah,
and all
but
of-
it's not as effective as the deadlift. That's the one thing I find
Yeah,
is
but then you have to build up to the deadlift. Again,
Right.
the question is, see, when you're asking people to do compound movements, how prepared is their body to do those compound movements? So I, as a coach, for me, safety first. I can't risk a client getting injured. So even if you are doing that for yourself, be sensible. So even if you were to deadlift, let's say, I would say you can use your own body weight, do hyperextensions and or even basic stuff like good mornings
Yeah.
to work and strengthen your lower back first before you progress to the deadlift.
Right.
So if you just directly jump into the deadlift, unless you are an athlete or you have very high physical activity, it's a pretty risky exercise for you then.
Yeah, I know a lot of people nowadays with a weak core and a lower back. Core, I mean the abdominal region and the lower back. A lot of people having that issue because they're always sitting like we're a desk job. And even the exercise they get, they don't train the core. They all often neglect
Yeah,
it.
because again, core training people think is doing 1,000 crunches. That's not core training.
Yeah.
Core strengthening and abdominal work are two different things.
Right.
So core strengthening, you can just do basic stuff like there's a guy called Stuart McGill, Dr.
Okay.
Stuart McGill. So Stuart McGill has these very basic set of core strengthening exercises. If you do those, not only will your core get strong and you'll have benefits in your deadlift, squat, and bench, You'll also notice that your hamstrings get loose. You're able to touch your toes, a lot of that. So you can just Google McGill's Big Three.
Right.
McGill's Big Three. If you just Google it, you'll get those exercises. Very simple exercises, but if you do them, you'll be shaking
Okay.
because they directly target your core strength.
Uh-huh.
And you just do that protocol. It's just something you can do as a warm up every day before you start your exercises. And you'll see tremendous improvement in your posture. You'll
Uh-huh.
see huge improvement in your squat, deadlift, bench,
Yeah.
any movement that you do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Have you had a like I had this friend of mine, and it's very easy for him to stay lean.
Hmm.
I think he eats. You talked about you eating 2,000 calories a day.
Hmm.
He eats about 3,500,
Okay.
and he eats a lot of crap as well.
Hmm.
And a lot of my friends from the gym, they were like, "Oh, we trained with this guy,
Hmm.
and we got fat in a week."
Hmm.
And I tell them all the time, he thinks he has this magic formula
Hmm.
that if people do what he does, everyone's gonna stay in shape. But that's not the case, right?
Hmm.
Do you have trouble with like different body types, and have you ever seen someone who had maybe a lot of trouble getting lean? Because there's those body types, right? Endomorph, mesomorph, and
Yeah, so that those are misleading terms.
okay.
It was actually coined by a psychologist, those body types. In reality, every single person is a body type of their own.
Okay.
And body types are also driven a lot by number one, your body composition. For example, there could be two women standing in front of me. Both are, let's say, 5'3", both are 60 kilos. But one has more muscle, one has more fat. Immediately, their body types change. So your genetics matter. Individual genetics really, really matter. So, for example, my wife,
Yeah.
she gets away drinking beer, ice cream, and whatnot. But one thing that you cannot ignore is that end of the day, it's calories in versus calories out.
Right.
But how those calories are utilized, where are those calories coming from? Those they also matter.
But the quality of calories matters, right? As you mentioned, it's calories in, calories out,
Exactly.
but what you eat
So
is
there are hormonal reasons and there are genetic reasons, there are age related reasons, so many things that are there which can determine how quickly or how slowly a person might lose weight. For me, again, as a coach, the most important thing is when a client approaches me is balance the calories out so that their quality of life is good. They have enough energy to, work, function, all of that. The biggest problem that people have, like you said in the beginning of the podcast, they yo-yo a lot.
yeah, yo-yo dieting.
Right.
That's
They're
a big
constantly
problem.
yo-yoing. They do a keto, then they go off it. They do intermittent, then they go off it. So when you go off, immediately you're putting on all that weight. And actually that hurts your body even
What's
more.
your opinion on the ketogenic diet, and have you used it
I
for
have
your own
no
clients?
I have no opinion on it.
You've used it for your own clients?
I have tried it on myself a couple of times. Because I personally like eating a lot of fat.
Yeah.
I didn't benefit tremendously from it.
But
In
there's a
fact, I
way to
looked.
do it, right? Because I tried keto and I had a terrible. I lost around my hair when I was doing
See,
keto
again, it
because I
depends.
don't
You
think I did it.
70 to 80% of your calories need to come from fat,
Yeah,
and
I
you need
didn't
to
do
get a
it right.
lot of
That's for
fiber
sure.
in your diet.
Yeah,
If you do it, so I personally feel, and there is data to substantiate this, that for diabetics, it's an amazing diet.
yeah.
Because obviously, the first thing is you're removing carbohydrates, your insulin sensitivity
Because
improves, all of.
diabetes is insulin resistance. That's what
Yes,
it is. Yeah.
so you obviously remove that aspect, but it's a very difficult diet to sustain with. And for me, that's the major concern. Like, look, there is no best exercise formula, there is no best diet formula. It all comes down to what you enjoy and what you can sustain.
Yeah.
And that's what I, as a coach, try to do with my clients. And the results come,
I
whether
had
it's.
this one friend of mine,
Hmm,
and he had diabetes.
hmm.
And for the longest time, he didn't exercise. He used to do walking and
You said
yoga.
had, is he still around?
No, no. So he's doesn't have diabetes anymore,
Okay,
and that's
great.
because he started lifting weights.
Hmm, hmm,
And the reason his diabetes went away
hmm,
is because when you eat a piece of bread or something like that,
hmm,
the first place glucose goes is towards your muscle.
hmm.
I mean, it's a good
Not
glucose,
necessarily. You're
not
still,
necessarily, but
yeah.
generally, if you've got a lot of muscle on your frame,
Hmm.
it's very difficult to get diabetes. Because when I'm doing a
Yeah, but
bicep,
he didn't have all that muscle when he first started training.
no, yeah,
Yeah.
and then he gained a lot of
So
muscle.
his glycogen utilization went up.
Exactly, his
Yeah.
insulin sensitivity improved like crazy.
Exactly. So,
And
there are multiple sets of things that are happening at once. It's not just one thing
yeah,
that's happening here. So yes, his diabetes probably got corrected because he started lifting weights, but I think he would have benefited if he would have done any form of physical activity, because basically he's burning more calories now.
right.
That's it. So the moment his body started utilizing those calories, obviously those extra whatever insulin sensitivity and all that he had lost, all restored itself to a certain extent.
Right. Is there any advantage to using kettlebells or over barbells and stuff like that?
Again, it comes down to
I
your
know a
style
lot
of
of people with
training.
shoulder issues,
Hmm.
and they've been using kettlebells.
Hmm.
And the other thing they've been doing is hanging a lot from a bar,
Hmm. Hmm.
and their shoulder issues have been like all of them have gone away, and they got those issues just using barbells and doing heavy overhead presses and stuff like that.
Depends on the issue. The
Yeah.
shoulder joint is a very complicated joint. It's the one joint which gives you the most amount of range of motion compared to
Right.
any other joint. You can articulate it in so many different directions, which is why it also is very susceptible to injury. So where I have issues with claims like this, that they did this, did that, correct ho gaya, sahi ho gaya, is because probably that's what happened for them. But if you have any kind of injury, it can also get worse if you don't
Yeah. But have you
correct.
used any kettlebells in your
I
training?
have. I use
Are you a big fan of it?
kettlebell. Very few exercises. I'm not a kettlebell expert or something like that, but I
Yeah.
use kettlebell for few exercises.
Do you
For
know
some of,
why the kettlebell was invented? I'm just asking.
I have no idea.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I've never looked into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know about the guy that invented it, Pavel Satsunin, right?
Hmm.
But I've had tremendous benefit from using kettlebells. But
Again, see, you're talking to somebody whose primary focus is conditioning and hypertrophy based training.
right.
So that's what I focus on. People come to me because they want to look a certain way, perform a certain way. So I have adapted into different styles of training that work well for my clients when it comes to their programming, and also something that they enjoy. Those are
Right.
the two aspects that I look at.
Yeah.
But I am not particularly biased towards one particular style of training.
Okay.
So if a client, for example, comes and tells me that I find walking boring and I would prefer sparring with a boxing instructor
Yeah.
for 20 minutes because I find that to be more fun, doesn't matter. Then do that form of cardio if that's what you enjoy. I'm not going to sit and now draw out the benefits of walking versus boxing, right? So, like I said,
Mm-hmm.
whatever you enjoy matters more
Yeah.
than getting into those small nitty gritties. So during the lockdown, people were happy if they just had a set of dumbbells and a bench. And
Yeah.
some people built amazing physiques with that.
That's all you need.
Huh. So do you really need to train with a bar? Like, first of all, how many people can hang off a bar? Do they even
Yeah.
have enough grip strength? Then how many people know how to use a kettlebell? It's something that has to be
Yeah.
gripped a certain way, and as it gets heavier, it gets more complicated. So then you need to invest in somebody teaching you how to use a kettlebell.
Yeah.
Dumbbells, standard barbells, or even some bodyweight exercises are much more straightforward, much more easier to adapt into. So again, क्यों client का life complicate करना है? You know, especially when some of my clients, one of my main objectives with them is for them to be independent.
Right.
Now, when I'm training them, if I'm unnecessarily complicating things by teaching them stuff which is going to add minuscule value, it doesn't make sense to me, and after a point, it will not make sense to them.
Right.
Nobody likes to feel miserable in the gym by failing in the exercises they're doing. So yeah, I can show them a fancy kettlebell, landmine press or a kettlebell swing or whatever. मैं कर लूंगा आराम से, बट वो जब करने जाएंगे उनकी फट जाएगी.
Yeah.
So wow, Arun, you could do it, but मैं तो नहीं कर पाया. So what is my success as a coach
Right.
if I can't teach that exercise well to my clients? So exercise selection is something that for a coach is very important. There's no point making your clients do a bunch of exercises which they can't do perfectly, and you can't force them to do it, giving 200 instructions while they're doing one rep. Give them an exercise that targets the basic muscles. They can execute it.
Yeah.
And most training optimization comes from having good tempo, having good range of motion, doing enough volume when you add enough repetitions, using the correct weight,
Yeah.
not too light, not too heavy. You do those things correctly. Like after 20 years of training, I'm still learning how to do those basic things correctly.
Yeah.
And my body's still making huge progress. Basics that. So I don't even see the need for further complicating my life by using XYZ,
Yeah.
things that are out there. People who use it, if they benefit, like I have a good friend, his name is Vinay Sangwan. He actually competes in the World Kettlebell Championship, and he's been
Okay.
winning the gold for India for a long time. So do I admire him for doing that? Absolutely. I mean, he's a good friend. I admire him for doing that. But does it inspire me to the point where now I want to, include an entire style of kettlebell training into my programs? No,
Mm-hmm.
because I know how complicated it is going to be.
Right.
Not to mention lack of availability also. Not every gym has all the different sizes and weights of kettlebells versus, let's say, a gym which will have everything from 2.5 to 50 kilo dumbbells.
Right.
So, yeah.
And apart from training and the diet, obviously you're optimizing that.
Hmm.
Have you experimented with other things like heat exposure, cold exposure, and I mean even stuff like yoga or animal flow.
If I'm very honest, the answer is yes and no.
Yeah.
Answer is yes in the sense, there are some clients who have tried these things. Some are, for some clients, yoga or animal flow is part of their day-to-day
But what's the
program.
reason for doing yoga? Let's say if you would tell me, okay,
नहीं,
incorporate
the
yoga,
answer
why
is
would
a
you tell
very
me to do that?
disappointing. The answer is a very disappointing answer, but उनको करना है तो मैं उनको करने देता हूँ.
Okay.
It's like that. I don't introduce it to them. Like, do I do yoga regularly? No. But whenever I get a chance to do yoga, because I know this very good guy who's good at yoga, and his yoga is very technical. It's not about just
Okay.
making you go through asanas.
Yeah.
He focuses a lot on alignment and isometrics and stuff like that. So there is some science behind his yoga. So
Yeah.
when I go to him and do yoga, I'm sweating. I'm
Right.
sweating profusely, number one. And number two, I also come out feeling good.
Hmm.
Not just from a general
Have
sense
you ever
of
taken
high.
a hot yoga class?
No.
Apparently, there's a lot of benefit to heat exposure, sauna, and muscle atrophy. And it prevents a lot of muscle atrophy.
So like, even I see a lot of my clients, I push them to do cold plunges,
Right.
whether it's cryotherapy. Some of them have in fact bought the cryo tubes.
Okay.
Some of them, do cold plunges where they, put ice in the
Yeah.
bathtubs and then they do it. So some people really like it, some people don't.
You don't
See,
think there's any advantage when people do yoga? Have you ever seen your breath slow down? Because that's something I've noticed.
the yoga definitely has a lot of benefits
But
in
do you
terms
think there's
of.
any advantage to that when you're training? You didn't see anything with your breath,
So very
especially?
recently, for a lady client of mine, what I noticed is, again, her yoga teacher focuses a lot on mobility, strengthening, and stuff like that. So when I was making her go through some exercises, she was like, "My yoga teacher also makes me do these things."
Right.
I was like, "Oh wow, that's interesting." So I make that client do those exercises because those exercises are the corrective exercises for her. But
Right.
it so happens that the yoga teacher also had the same reading
Right.
and decided to make her do the same thing. So she'd been suffering with some tension around her scapular region, which has now completely disappeared. She still has a little issue with her muscles firing,
Yeah.
but we are working on that. That's where I come in.
Okay. So let's say I'm a young guy watching this podcast. I look up to Arun Bhattacharya a lot, but I can't afford his services.
Hmm.
I'm looking to design my training program, and this is something that's happened with me as well. And people have told me, look, do progressive overload, right? Which is basically you stick with a weight, get comfortable with it, add more weight to it, and eventually get stronger and stronger. But the drawback of that is, and I've tried this on myself, is in theory, I'm gonna basically add 5 pounds here, 5 pounds here every month, and then in like 2 years, I'll be like a world champion, which just doesn't happen. Right? And I think there's a pretty famous story. I don't know if you've heard of Milo of Croton. Okay, so the story, Milo was a very famous strength magazine. I think it still is around, I'm not sure. But the story, the way progressive overload was discovered, was there was this guy who used to walk with a calf on his back. He used to walk up hills, and his calves grew stronger and stronger. So he would carry a calf, and obviously his calves would get trained, and then he would start carrying heavier calves. So the calf got heavier. So that was progressive overload, and he got bigger and bigger. So that's where the progressive overload term was taken from, and that's the story of Milo. There's a famous strength
Okay.
magazine
It's an
regarding that.
interesting story.
Yeah,
It's not something I ever gave much thought to, but
that's
okay.
where they found was progressive back
Definitely
in
I'm
the
going
day.
to read up on this.
Yeah,
Nice.
and so let's say I'm a beginner and I'm trying to design my strength program. How do I go about? Because progressive load, I've heard about it, but doesn't work. And if you're just it's just free training advice for someone who can't afford your services.
Yeah,
but-
yeah. So I have these conversations very often, and I tell people the easiest thing to do is just pick a sport. That's the easiest thing to do, because when you have a sport, then you have a reference of where your performance is improving. Like
Right.
even what you just mentioned right now, this person was just doing something where they were doing a functional activity of carrying this calf on his back.
Yeah,
But the manifestation of that became that he got bigger legs, bigger calf muscles because of doing that, because he was training them.
right.
So obviously, once he started noticing that, that's when he realized that he can also carry bigger calves on his back, and then get big calves as a result of that. So if you have a sport, be it golf, cricket, kabaddi, I don't know, whatever it is that you like, swimming, then try to orient your training around that.
Right.
Progressive overload It doesn't mean that you have to do bench press, you have to do deadlift, you have to do squats. You can, if you like Michael Phelps, then go and try to be a swimmer like him. If you like Kobe Bryant, then try to be a basketball player like him. I personally feel that, you know, having a sport to motivate you is a much more easier way to aim for something, to have the target setting.
Also, it's a social thing. That's what I find with a lot of people. Because a lot of
Absolutely.
people don't like going to the gym because it's sort of a lonely
See,
pursuit
I
and they
know
find it
people
very
who are
boring.
also going and doing hot laps around BIC, you know, Buddha International Circuit, and they just drive their cars really fast around it, and they just want to be really fit to able to do that lap after lap after lap. That's a
Right.
very individual thing.
Yeah. Why not?
But you know, or you could just go to the squash court and play on your own.
Okay.
But or you could just run a marathon where you're just timing yourself. There are a lot of ways to do this in a more you know, non-social environment as well, especially if you're just trying to benchmark yourself. You don't want to get super competitive with people around you. You just want to be competing with yourself. But in whatever context you look at it, it's the best thing is get a sport that you can follow. Otherwise, if training is like your only priority because you're like, भाई मेरे को बस fit रहना है, बताओ क्या करना है, कैसे जाऊँ, नहीं जाऊँ. Best thing is go to the gym. Don't waste your time, because I have and many other people do. Even if you like, rather go to a local gym and hire a good trainer there than wasting your money in a fancy gym and just taking a membership and using the treadmill and not knowing what the hell to do with the rest of the equipments. That would be my advice. That's exactly what I did when I started out in Chennai back in 2000, like 6 or 7, when I first joined a gym. There was a gym called Maverick in Indranagar in Chennai where I stayed. So very fancy gym. Back then, they were charging 20,000 rupees for a year.
Yeah.
I went, saw the gym, I saw the trainers, they all looked really good. I
Yeah.
saw the equipments and all looked very fancy. Then my dad was like, "Tu jaake karega kya? You know, you don't know what to do here,
Yeah.
right? So instead, why don't you go to a gym where they can actually teach you, but we can afford the services?" So he actually put me in a physio clinic.
Okay.
Down the road, there was a place where there was a physio clinic. So there was this guy who was a physiotherapist, but he also used to train pretty hard. So he looked pretty decently buff.
Yeah.
But he was mostly just helping people rehabilitate and recover from their injuries and stuff. So उस gym में सबसे बड़ा dumbbell था 5 kilo.
Right.
But the number of things that guy taught me, not that I took his personal training or anything, he just basically took that standard 350 rupees every month. The gym had no air conditioning,
Right.
and it was a very basic physio clinic.
Mm-hmm.
So some people worked in groups where he had his assistants who would make them do different things.
Yeah.
So he obviously realized that I am somebody who's come to just lift weights.
Yeah.
I like weightlifting. So he taught me how to do squats, he taught me how to do deadlifts, bench press, all of
Yeah.
that. But he taught me some pretty basic stuff also. Like, for example, if you're lifting something off the floor,
Yeah.
don't lift with your back, lift with your legs.
Yeah.
You know, so कैसे झुक के कुछ like, you know, कुछ उठाना है, कैसे अपना posture रखना है, when especially when you're working out, how do
Yeah.
you gauge your grip width?
Yeah.
How do you grip something? You know, a lot of times I notice people just let something roll into their fingers, and next thing they're just holding on to the bar. Instead, you need to constantly crush the bar
Right.
and make sure that you're gripping it really tight.
Mhm.
So he taught me all those basic things, which I carried forward. And the way I look at it is, I've been training for 20 years and I've never been injured.
Okay.
I managed to put on whatever muscle I have, compete, do powerlifting, play different types of sports. I was a central defense in my college football team. I was a powerlifter after that. In school, I was into javelin, shot put, all of those things. And never did I ever get injured due to training, simply because I believed that from the time I started, I needed somebody to guide me.
Right.
So you don't want to be wasting your time
Yeah.
going out there asking people tips, de do, ye de do. If you really are on a budget and you have no, you know, even you can't even spend that much money
Yeah.
to, you know, even work in a gym जहाँ पे कोई आपको basic guidance दे सकता है, तो work out with somebody.
Right.
You know, maybe go with somebody who's spent some time in the gym. At least they'll have some sort of a program for you to start with,
Right.
some, you know, references for you to understand where your nutrition should be. But you have to have some sort of framework to begin with. You can't
Yeah.
just go and be like, अच्छा जिम जाना है, क्या करना है जिम जाके,
Right.
क्या करोगे? कोई बोलेगा चेस्ट मार लो, ये मार लो. And unfortunately now, because things have become very commercial, everybody's going to try taking advantage of you. The trainers
Yeah.
are going to come and say, हाँ आप मेरे साथ personal training लेगो, मैं आपको body बना दूंगा.
Yeah.
or some gym guy will say कि आप इसको hire कर लो या वो कर लो, ये कर लो.
Or take this substance or that substance. That
I
also
mean,
happens.
that
Especially with a lot of
I'm
kids.
not
I've
going
seen.
that far. I'm not judging people that extent. I'm saying even somebody who's just being professional, if you go to them and say, hey, I want some guidance from you, they'll say, sure, my time is worth the money,
Yeah,
man. So you have to pay for it.
yeah.
So from a very basic, ethical, professional point of view also, there are people who will charge you something.
Yeah.
So
Time is money.
so work around it, invest in a coach. Like people who go to school, टीचर भी तो पढ़ा रहे हैं आपको सब्जेक्ट, फिर भी आप ट्यूशंस क्यों जा रहे हो? Because you needed extra attention in those subjects.
Right.
So why would you compromise when it comes to your health, especially when the risk of injury is very high? So go to a gym. I would rather say go to a local gym. If you're on a very tight budget, पैसे नहीं है, go to a local gym. Come out of this whole mindset of tips दे दो, guidance दे दो, कुछ तो बता दो. There are books you can read.
Yeah.
But go to a local gym, get a good trainer in that local gym. Even if the equipment is 50 years old, but if the trainer knows what he's doing, he can still ensure that you don't get injured. And whatever you will learn from that, you can actually transition all that knowledge to a better gym. And then when you eventually move yourself to a better gym, you will enjoy the more modern equipments that are around you, whether
Okay.
it's a hammer strength plate loaded machine or it's a life fitness treadmill or whatever it might be. So to have that ability
Yeah.
to make use of that, I mean, see, anybody can have the money to buy a Lamborghini, but if you don't know how to drive a car, then what's the point?
Yeah.
राइट तुम जिंदगी भर स्विफ्ट चलाए हो, आज बड़ा तुमने इन्वेस्टमेंट करके पैसे कमा लिया, लैम्बोर्गिनी खरीद लिया, फिर चला ही रहो तुम सेकंड गियर में, तुम्हारी फटती है थर्ड गियर में उस गाड़ी के, तो क्या फायदा हुआ?
Yeah.
यू आर नॉट इवन एंजॉयिंग इट, राइट? सो दैट्स द सेम थिंग हियर.
That's why I've been doing this podcast, because I have an iMac at home and every single day I feel guilty about not putting it to work.
So
you know.
the idea is that if you're buying something, how well are you going to utilize it? So if you're going to go to a fancy gym, but क्यों जा रहे हो? क्योंकि वहाँ पे लड़कियाँ अच्छी दिखते हैं या लोग अच्छे दिखते हैं, क्राउड अच्छा है, लॉकर रूम अच्छा है, और उसका क्या उखाड़ेगा तू? It's your time that you're spending there, and make
the
the
money
most and
as
make the
well.
most of it.
Yeah.
And that's the funny thing, right? I mean, I don't find it insulting, but I find it very sad when people just come and say, tell me something now, how can I start? Like I was recently in this Ladakh trip where I rode around Ladakh for about 13 days, and many people from that group, give me some tips. No, I said, what tips am I supposed to give you? No, what should I do? I said, I don't know, do whatever you're doing. No, is it better to swim or walk? I said, whichever you enjoy. So I gave, because these are very neutral answers, but the thing is, they want me to have a stand. I'm like, why do I need to have a stand when even scientifically speaking, there is not one is superior to the other? Can you keep swimming for 1 hour? No, you can't. But can you keep walking for an hour? Yes, you can.
Yeah.
So if you have an hour, go walk. Maybe a swimming pool is not accessible for everybody.
Right.
You just go down your house कि घर के अंदर ही फोन पे हो, वॉक कर लो, हो गई.
Yeah.
आपका थोड़ा कार्डियोवैस्कुलर एक्टिविटी हो गया. और स्विमिंग करना है तो यहाँ से 15 किलोमीटर गाड़ी चला के जाओ, स्विमिंग ट्रंक्स लेके जाओ, वार्म अप करो, नहाओ, स्विम करो, फिर से उतरो, नहाओ, भूख लगेगी पागलों जैसे, जो बर्न किया उसको और फिर से और खाओगे उसके ऊपर. क्यों? सच वॉकिंग कर लो. So like a lot of my clients who struggle to get enough cardio, I tell them after your dinner, do you feel heavy? Like हाँ पेट बड़ा भरा भरा सा लगता है, at least I need 2 hours to go to sleep. Do you do any work then? No. Go for a walk.
Yeah.
Instead of sitting on your phone, watching a Netflix or whatever, take your wife or
Get
your
steps
partner
in.
or your dog or whatever, kids, and just go for a walk.
Yeah.
You'll feel light also. It'll give you time to assess. It'll help you calm down. When that sleep you get after, going for a good walk in the night is just amazing. You feel light the next day. Your bowel movements are better. So small things like that. But ये generic advice लोग लेके क्या करेंगे? इससे बेहतर है कि आप किसी को hire करो. Respect your time more importantly than respecting anyone else's time. Because the more time you're going to waste trying to figure this out, the more you're going to regret.
Yeah.
That, 99% of the world needs to figure this out because the 1% already has. Because only that 1% has amassed all the wealth and knowledge.
1% owns 50% of the world's wealth.
Exactly. So the remaining 99% need to get one thing through their head, that when you want to learn something, it is important to hire a subject expert. You can't learn it on your own. So ठीक है, आपने एक ट्रेनर के साथ बहुत साल काम किया, you're in a place right now where you just want to maintain, you decide to train on your own, I get it. But you simply cannot say that your quality of training is going to be as good, if not better, without the guidance of a coach.
Yeah.
So if that is something people can get through into their head, then the sooner the better, and
All
then
right.
they can waste less time trying to figure out what a beginner should do. If you are a beginner, then get yourself a coach. It's as simple as that.
So last but not least,
Hmm.
I was just speaking to my friend the other day
Hmm.
at the gym,
Hmm.
and I was telling, man, I'm training hard.
Hmm.
I'm dieting.
Hmm.
I've been doing music in my spare time,
Hmm.
and I've been working pretty hard as well.
Hmm.
And I just told him that, why the hell am I doing any of this?
Hmm. Hmm.
Why not just sit around and chill?
Hmm.
Because I don't need the money personally.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I was just asking him, why bother doing anything?
Hmm.
So I just want to ask you, last but not least,
Hmm.
why do you do what you do? I mean, what's the meaning behind it? And what are you trying to get out of
Uh,
life, anyways, in general? Because you've done well for yourself in terms of conventional terms. You've got that success. But what are you? What is
believe me, if there is one person in this world who's tried to get an answer to that, that's me.
okay?
And when people tell me this, it's very humbling that you're in a good place. आपने बहुत कुछ achieve किया है, ये वो. For the standards I have set for myself, no. But if people feel so, ठीक है, I acknowledge that. I'm not going to be an asshole and say कि नहीं 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 आप बकवास कर रहे हो, मैंने कुछ भी achieve नहीं किया है.
Yeah.
वो कभी-कभी ज़्यादा ही हो जाता है. I'm somebody who's very lazy.
Okay.
I mean, if my mom was alive, she would tell you. My father will definitely tell you if he ever gets a chance. I'm one of the biggest lazy fucks out there. And more than anyone, my ex-girlfriends, my family members, they all know it. My wife knows it. If I am not strongly motivated towards something, like if there is a movie that my wife is like, chalo na kahin chalte hain, I'm like, kyun jana hai?
Yeah. Also,
Because
I don't think we're 15 anymore. I don't watch movies either. If you tell me spending 2 hours on
it
a
doesn't
movie,
matter
I'm not
what it
going to do
is.
that.
I would rather sleep in my house, cuddle my cats,
Yeah.
and watch something on Netflix or whatever, than go out. Even though I have hundreds of reasons to go out. So for me, the motivation for whatever I do is simply because there are two folds. Number one, I like making a difference,
Right.
and every time somebody reaches out to me and says that they want to work with me, that's one more person in whose life I can make a difference. And it truly upsets me when sometimes things don't work out for
Yeah.
whoever's fault it is. Sometimes it's nobody's fault, but when somebody's paid me their hard-earned money, whether that's a celebrity or a housewife, it doesn't matter. But when I don't make a difference, then it really bothers me. But when I do, it really really gives me so much more motivation. And that's when comes into my second point, which is having purpose.
Right.
And it makes me feel like I have a purpose. And if I had to add a third point into it, I just want to be the best that I can be.
Right.
I feel that in my upbringing was such that I never got the most fair opportunities.
Okay.
Throughout my life, I was told that you have a lot of potential. You can be good at this, you can be good at that.
Were you a good
Did
student?
I?
Were you a good student when you were young?
I was not a good. The thing is, I was not good at anything, because everything was very random. I changed 9 schools because my dad moved
Wow.
around a lot,
Uh-huh.
multiple cities. So by the time I would settle down in one place and try to find my groove, I'm already moving on to the next place. Different states. West Bengal, mein ho, Bengali. I'm a Bengali. I'm born in West Bengal, but we were there one day. Suddenly, my dad has a job in Chennai. That's a complete culture shock. Now, I loved my time in Chennai. I love people, Tamilian people, and I love the city. I have such fond memories. But it was just culture shock initially.
Yeah.
And then, we've lived in other cities also. I've lived in Bangalore for 15 years.
Yeah.
I, left that, came to Hyderabad now. So I've never really been good at anything in life. I've always felt like somebody said, अच्छा अभी अच्छा कर लेते हो, अच्छा उसको मैं परस्यू करता तो कर सकता था, ये वो. Then I realized I have hundreds of such talents. मैंने किया क्या उसका? So among a lot of them, this is one of those things where I feel that this empathy that I have as a coach, the ability to observe people, giving them the right guidance, respecting their sentiments, helping them, making a difference. That's where I felt my calling was. And at least so far it's paying pretty well. So,
Yeah.
it helps me make a decent living. And end of the day gives me enough joy, because you want to make money out of something as well. Tum charity nahi kar rahe ho. Yesterday I was watching this very interesting documentary where this guy in Finland, in Helsinki, left an amazing Michelin star restaurant job, which had to unfortunately temporarily shut down because of the lockdowns. But he always had this thing that I'll go back to my home country and I'll open a burger station, a burger
Mm-hmm.
van.
Yeah.
And he was earning like so much money, working in this Michelin star restaurant. But when the lockdown happened, and when he came, he realized that people in Helsinki, that is the capital of Finland, there were a lot of people out of jobs. They don't have enough money, and they are eating really crappy food. So he basically came up with a van where what he calls is an equivalent, what he charges is an equivalent of about $5.
Yeah.
And he has two different types of foods that he does. One is these burgers, and the other is these take homes, these meals. But here's the catch, he does them with all the Michelin star finesse that he's learned.
Mm.
So he's giving you that level of sophistication for what is equivalent to Indian rupees, maybe about 300 odd bucks.
Yeah.
So that's amazing, And when I see people doing that, that gives me a lot of motivation that maybe I'm on the right path as well. End of the day, people pay you what they pay you. That's very subjective. My clients in Hyderabad have been very generous in that sense. But does that mean that, I don't seek joy? It's only money that's driving me? Absolutely not. I feel very sad when sometimes people message me and say, even I want super bikes like yours, even I want this, I want that. Those things are a celebration of what I've achieved. I am a materialistic person. Always, as a kid, I've always wanted those things. I never thought I would get those things. Today I have the money to buy those things. I feel happy about it. But was I thinking those things when I was working? No. In fact, there are easier ways to achieve those things, like perhaps what you're doing in terms of trading and all.
Yeah.
I would rather sit and spend more time doing that, which will earn me way more money. I was in fact in corporate real estate for 4 years.
Yeah.
That could have earned me a lot more money than doing this. Why would I have chosen this?
Yeah.
So people don't get that. And I think that's where their value system is a little messed up. So yeah, coming back to what you said, why am I doing, basis what I'm doing? It's simply because of these primary things. I like having a purpose. I like making a difference,
Yeah,
and I
I think
want to be the
everyone
best that I can do.
everyone likes having purpose. Like gives you a
I
totally
know a lot of
different,
people don't.
totally gives
They
you a
are
different drive in life.
the whole world is running like what my brother would always say, that the whole world runs on B grade people who do what they are told to do. So a lot of people don't want to sit and think what they should do, what their purpose is. Rather, if somebody finds purpose in them and makes them do a job and pay them for it, then for some people, just living, surviving, like one of my coaches, and this will be the last thing we'll say, before we wrap this up. I asked him very interestingly. The other day, I asked him, like, what is your life goal? So he was like, Arun Garu, so he's a Telegite. So he's like, Arun Garu, I don't know what to say. I said, but what is your life goal? Like, what do you want to do with your life? So first thing that came up to his head, and I gave him enough time to think. It's not that I harassed him for an answer. So about an hour later of us talking, he said, I have this house loan that my dad took few years back. The EMI is 18,000. In between, he had lost his job. So I just want to close that loan. I said, that's your life goal.
Yeah.
You're 27 years old.
And that's his life
And
goal.
that's your
Just
life
too
goal.
close off alone. Yeah.
I was like, so, okay, so I'll give you, what is the balance left? He said
Yeah.
6 lakhs. I said, what if I transfer that 6 lakhs right now? Your life goal is done. Now what? He's like, I don't know. But he's a good coach. He's an amazing trainer. And he was working with F45. I hired him for a client of mine. The client loves him. He's good at what he does. But he likes to be told what to do. He doesn't really have a purpose per se. So there are some people who are just floating along.
As
they're
you mentioned,
taking.
common sense is not that common. So
It's not even about common sense. Sometimes people find the thought of trying to imagine what they want to do tomorrow. क्या करना है जिंदगी? उतना आगे सोचते ही नहीं है. Maybe it's their conditioning. Maybe it's their upbringing. Maybe it's just lack of ambition. Who are we to judge?
yeah.
So that's why I said, like, a lot of people are good at a lot of things, but is that really what they should do? And I told him that you're a good trainer, but is that what you really want to do? Maybe there is something else with your life that you want to do that you really want to be good at. I was not very good at being a coach. I never thought I'll be a coach. People ask me to coach them, and next thing it so happens that here is a guy who was always read into the subject and has knowledge, is also able to coach people. But I know how much learning I had to do to become a coach versus the anatomical knowledge and other things which came to me very naturally. To be a coach, I was not in the right temperament. I'm very short tempered. I can be very impatient. I get very agitated. And I'm still those things when it comes to my friends and family.
Right.
But when I'm a coach, it's like I'm in that zone that I know that these are the things that I need to be. And as time has gone, people say, like, Arun is very patient, Arun is very understanding, very empathetic. So when I hear those things, I laugh in my head because I'm like, I'm actually not those
Yeah.
things. But I've conditioned myself to be good at my work. I have conditioned myself to have those things. So now it's up to you whether it's something comes easy to you. So that's why you're doing it. But are you really going to grow? And so I asked this guy, like, do you think you're going to grow in this business? Like, this is what you're getting today. You were earning this much with F45. Now you're earning this much with me. Now what? Do you even have a financial goal?
Yeah.
So, no answer. And believe me when I tell you this, there are a lot of people like that.
I
Well,
hope they take this away from this podcast. For apart from the fitness stuff, at least they can set a goal for themselves.